Now, what will happen under the new scheme? So the new scheme, first of all, grants, I'm sure you all know, but basically it does three things compared with the previous schemes. It converts loans to grants. That's one thing. It is much more generous. It used to cover only the tuition. Now it will cover the tuition plus what we call maintenance, housing, accommodation, books, transportation, okay? Much more generous, loans to grants, and a much larger number of students will be eligible to receive those grants. Under the previous threshold of 122,000 rands per family, there were about already 75% of the population that was eligible, a much less number of students because the students are concentrated in the rich categories. But now, when you bring this threshold to 350,000 rand per family, it will concern more than 90% of the population. When you take into account all these things, and basically because some of the shortcomings of the previous systems are being addressed now, in particular when it comes to the risks or the fact that all the costs are being covered, meaning there's almost zero risk for the student to start an education, we anticipate that the demand for tertiary education will increase a lot. Of course, it will be constrained by the number of students that are academically eligible to get into those new institutions. But in TVET in particular, we've seen in the previous chart that the reservoir of students, the number of students that have the diploma, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, to enter TVET is very high. And now suddenly you receive at least 40,000 rands for your maintenance. This is a very strong incitement to go to enroll in TVET and university. And when you compare it with what is the admission capacity of new entrants every year in the system, in public institutions for national students, we are the only one eligible to receive the new scheme now. We anticipate a growth in demand for education at TVET of almost 90% and of almost 25% in universities. So there's going to be a big pressure on the system. A number of students will knock on the door for admission, and I think, as I understand, it is happening now. It is starting to happen recently. What is the situation for the fiscus, for the government? We compute that, and it will take years for the full effect to be implemented and failed because it's a cohort thing where the first year, second year, third year, 3 years will benefit over time of this thing. But after 4 years, we anticipate that the cost for the authorities of supporting students to enroll in universities, keeping it unchanged as of today, the number of students who actually get enrolled, but you just give them more support, okay, will increase the cost for the fiscus by more than 1% of GDP, which is, as of today, about 50 billion rand per year more. Without increasing admission, without making any effort to improve the quality of education. We believe it will create some tension because the money you put there, you cannot put it to improve admission capacity. And then so there will be a number of students knocking on the door that will not be able to enter. And you don't improve the quality of education, in particular in TVET and community colleges, where we see there's a big problem, okay? So this is the cost for the macro. Now you can say it's a cost, but maybe it will deliver more returns, no? Okay, eventually you invest in students, so you're supposed to get more returns for the society, not only for the students themselves, but for the society. So we computed what we call fiscal returns. When you look at what the government is paying up front, and it will pay more now, and what we will get down the line in terms of higher ability to tax richer graduates, because when you graduate, you make more money, you're supposed to contribute more to the fiscus. So in the previous system, it was more or less balanced. The government was over time recouping what they had invested, and these are positive, slightly positive, but positive rate of returns to the investment that the country was making in the system. With the new system, it becomes strongly negative, meaning that it's going to be very difficult to sustain over time, because the more money you put in the system, the more you lose down the line. And that's where the policy trade-off is. Where should this money be put? Should it be just to support students, or should it be to some extent to raise admission capacity, to improve the quality of education? And what are the solutions to resolve this trade-off? Just one thing to say that so we've done that at the macro. Fiscal returns are computation done at the macro level, really looking at what a student would do, what it would get, what it would contribute to the fiscus, etc. But you can do it as well at the macroeconomic level, because you have a number of factors that are at play as well. You put more, you give more support to the student. They will spend their money in accommodation, in food, that stimulates to some extent the economy. You would build a few more schools. Some of the students will pay more taxes. It will have an impact on the labor market in terms of the wage premium if you have more skilled workers coming to the market. And so in our recent publication, we had what we call the baseline that was looking at what would be the situation in terms of inequality, poverty, etc., without changing anything. And because of underlying forces and progress that have been made since 1994, we see that despite low growth, inequality would go down by 2030. From a current Gini, which is the metric of inequality, which stood at almost 0.63 in 17 to just below 60 in 2030. This is our baseline scenario. Our second scenario is a scenario where the NSFAS scheme is being implemented, but that's restricting the capacity of the system to absorb more students. But there are effects of redistribution, because the poor students get more money, they're being able to spend, etc., and some of them will graduate. And so that is reducing inequality. So the new NSFAS scheme is progressive in the sense that it reduces the Gini, but much less than in a third scenario, where you restrict really grants to the poorest to the poorest student, and you use some of the money that you free to expand capacity and to improve the quality of education, with some expected impact on graduation. And then you see that the Gini coefficient, comparing the second and the last two rows, is decreasing further. The bottom share of the consumption of the 40% poorest in the population see their share in total consumption increase by 1%, and the impact on growth will be positive, while in the other two scenarios, the impact on growth will be negative.